Hi. New Mexico, September 1881. The sky bled orange as 5 cowboys rode slow along a dry riverbed, their shadows stretching thin behind them. That's when she emerged from the sagebrush, barefoot, bleeding, her dress torn near the hem, and a bullet glinting in her belly. She staggered 1 step, 2, then collapsed to her knees. None of the riders moved. "Damn," one muttered, tightening his reins. "She's half dead already." They waited silent, still, except one. Colt Dyson dismounted without a word. He crossed the sand alone, lifted the woman into his arms, and carried her toward the trickle of water threading through the ravine. He washed the blood from her side, gave her water, pressed a cloth to the wound. The others watched, then turned their horses and rode on. He stayed. Colt Dyson didn't speak much. Not anymore. Once he'd been a bounty hunter, riding with a federal posse that tracked outlaws through gulches and ghost towns. He had a reputation. Cold, efficient, a man who never missed his shot. They called him Judge Colt, because his rifle was quicker than any courtroom. Then came the Juno Ridge manhunt. A 12-year-old girl had gotten caught in the crossfire. An outlaw's bullet, maybe Colt's. No one ever proved whose. Didn't matter. Her body lay in the snow, face down, a rag doll dropped by the wind. Colt never fired another shot after that. He walked away from the badge, the money, and the men who'd called themselves justice. Vanished into the desert with nothing but a canteen, his horse and silence. For 5 years he rode nowhere. Worked stables, fenced land for strangers, kept to the edges of towns, never stayed long. People talked around him, not to him. They didn't know his story, and he never offered it. He wasn't seeking redemption. He wasn't seeking anything. But sometimes, fate finds you even when you're hiding. The woman he found bleeding by the river was unconscious most of that first night. He used a needle and thread to close her wound. He wrapped her ribs with strips from his own shirt. He changed the bandage when it soaked red, kept a fire going through the chill hours before dawn. She moaned in her sleep, once calling out a name, "Miley." Morning light revealed more than the wound. Her hands were blistered, her feet bruised raw from running. Her hair was matted with dried blood, and around her throat was a broken locket. Inside, 2 tiny sketches, a girl and a boy. Colt didn't touch it. Instead, he packed what was left of his supplies, fashioned a sling from his saddle blanket, and lifted her onto his horse. He didn't know her name, didn't know what she'd fled, but he knew what it meant to run from ghosts, and what it meant when you were too hurt to do it alone. He rode toward the old mining trail, toward a safe place he hadn't spoken of in years. As the sun rose behind them, painting the desert in quiet fire, Colt Dyson pressed forward, past the point where old lives ended, and something else had to begin. It was dusk when she stirred in the saddle. Colt Dyson walked beside the horse, leading it down the trail. The desert air had cooled, but sweat still clung to his shirt. He glanced up as the woman's breath caught in her throat. She blinked against the fading sun. He steadied her with one hand. "You're all right." She tried to sit straighter. Her lips were dry, cracked. "Water." He gave her the canteen. She drank too fast and nearly choked. He waited until she caught her breath again. "My name's June," she whispered. "June Mercer." Colt nodded. "You're safe." Her gaze moved down to the bloodied cloth at her waist. "How bad is it?" "You'll live." June looked at him hard, eyes full of pain and something more, purpose. "My kids, Miley and Tommy. They took them." Colt's face didn't move. "They left me to bleed out," she said. "Said their father would come for them." "Who?" he asked. "Joe Harknell. Calls himself captain now. Was my husband's right hand until he went bad. Real bad." She coughed, then winced, the pain folding her in half. Colt steadied her again, gently. "They're using my kids as bait," she said. "My husband's wanted by the law. Harknell wants him to show." Colt didn't answer right away, but his grip on the reins tightened. "I need help," June said. "I know." That night, He brought her to a narrow canyon he hadn't visited in years. A ruined mining cabin crouched between rock walls. Inside waited a woman with iron-gray hair and surgeon's hands. Emma Calloway didn't ask questions. She examined June by lamplight, cleaned the wound, and dug the bullet out while Colt held her still. "She's strong," Emma said when it was done. "She'll make it." Colt nodded once and stepped into the night. Emma followed. "You're going after them?" "Yes. You know Harknell's not alone?" "I do." Emma placed a hand on his arm. "Don't die for someone else's child." Colt looked past her into the dark. "They don't belong to him." Then he rode. The trail led north, through border towns and dry creeks. A merchant in Rincon remembered a man with 2 children, called them his kin. A blacksmith near Blanco said a girl had been crying behind a wagon. Colt listened, traced stories like broken bones healing in the wrong direction. By the 6th day, he found the camp in Mesa Creek Valley. 3 tents, a fire, 6 men. The children tied near a wagon, guarded. Colt watched from the ridge, silent, unmoving. Harknell stood at the center, barking orders, laughing too loud. Colt didn't move closer, because this wasn't just a kidnapping. This was bait. The way the guards stayed loose. The wide camp, it was meant to be seen, meant to draw someone out. Colt didn't need to ask who. He returned to the canyon. June was sitting up in bed, her face pale but alert. "You found them," she said. "Yes." "What's wrong?" Colt's silence said it all. She closed her eyes. "He's there, isn't he?" "No. But they're waiting for him." "My husband." Her voice dropped. "I ran from him, took the kids. Thought we were safe." Colt nodded. "If he shows up, people die. If he doesn't—" She didn't finish. "They'll keep the kids. Or kill them." Colt said nothing. June's voice hardened. "Then I have to go. I have to end this myself." "You can't walk. Then crawl." Colt looked away, jaw tight. "We'll find a way." Her hand touched his sleeve. "Promise me you won't walk away." "I stayed, didn't I?" Colt rose before dawn, saddle cinched tight in silence. He filled his canteen, tied a bandage roll to the back of the saddle, and paused just long enough to watch the canyon catch fire with the rising sun. Behind him, June sat on the cabin stoop wrapped in Emma's blanket, the pain still etched in her face but her voice steady. "Don't kill him unless you have to," she said. Colt didn't answer. He mounted and rode north. Mesa Creek Valley lay quiet beneath a pale sky. The camp was still there, tents, fire pit, wagons. The children sat slumped beside the wagon, wrists bound. Colt counted 6 men again. But this time, he saw the signal fires beyond the ridge. Back up. Harknell wasn't just holding the children, he was laying a trap. But not for Colt. For a man who hadn't arrived. So Colt made a decision. He returned to Emma's place with urgency in his blood and a plan forming like thunder behind his eyes. June was waiting. She could barely walk, but she stood when he came in. "You said you wanted to end this," he told her. "I do." "Then it has to be now." Emma started to protest, but June raised a hand. "Tell me. We stage it. I draw them out. You go in." June blinked. "You want me to go into the camp? You're the only one they're not watching for. They think you're dead. That gives us one chance." Emma stepped in. "She's not strong enough." "I don't need strength," June said, already pulling herself upright. "I need to see my children." That night, Colt lit a signal fire 2 ridges away from the camp. Just enough to catch Harknell's eye and stir panic in his men. He broke a few branches, left deliberate boot prints heading west, and vanished into the shadows. By midnight, half the camp had gone scouting. And that's when June crawled through the sagebrush. She moved with shaking limbs, each breath a fight. The wound at her side barely closed. The moonlight caught her face and made it pale, ghostly. But her eyes burned with purpose. She found the children tied near the wagon. Miley saw her first. "Ma!" June put a finger to her lips. "Quiet, baby. I've got you." Tommy stirred, his voice ragged. "They said you were dead. I was close." She worked at the ropes with a small knife. Colt had slipped her before he left. Took time too long. Her hands trembled. Her vision blurred. But finally the knots fell away. "You have to run," she whispered. "Colt's waiting past the ridge. You go now. Don't stop. Don't look back." "What about you?" Miley asked. "I've got one more thing to finish." The children hesitated. "Go," she snapped, and they ran, small shapes vanishing into the desert dark. Harknell returned minutes later with 2 of his men. He saw the empty wagon, and then he saw her, standing beside the fire, the blade still in her hand. "June," he breathed, stunned. "You should have made sure I was dead," she said. Harknell drew his revolver, furious. "Where are they?" "Gone." "You think you've won something?" he barked, stepping forward. "Your husband will come for them, and when he does, I'll finish the job he started on you. I'm not afraid of him anymore." Harknell raised the gun, and Colt stepped from the shadows behind him. "No," Colt said. "You're afraid of me." The gunshot split the air, quick and clean. Harknell fell to his knees, blood pouring from his shoulder. Colt kept walking forward. The other men tried to raise their weapons, but found themselves face to face with Emma, standing on the ridge with a rifle aimed steady. "Go," she told them, "or the next bullet won't be a warning." They went. Later, as dawn touched the valley, Colt and June sat beside the fire. The children were safe, hidden in a nearby gulch with Emma standing watch. June leaned into Colt, weak but alive. "I thought I'd never see them again," she whispered. "You got them back. Not alone." She looked at him. "What now?" Colt didn't speak for a long time. The sky turned gold above them. Finally, he said, "Now we find someplace quiet, where they won't follow, where we can live, not run." "And if he comes back?" she asked, meaning the man who'd broken her, the man still out there. "Then he'll find a family," Colt said, "and he'll learn what happens when you threaten that." June reached for his hand, and he let her. They stayed like that as the fire died, wrapped in silence, in something that felt almost like peace. Trouble didn't come with thunder. Came quiet. 2 days after the children were safe, Colt saw a lone rider crest the ridge at dusk. A dot against the fading sky, watching, measuring. "He's scouting," Colt said. Emma followed his gaze. "Mercer, or someone he sent." By nightfall, smoke signaled from 3 different ridges, thin black lines against a copper sky. Not campfires. Messages. Directions. Threats. June stood on the porch, wind tugging at her shawl. "It's him. It's Thomas." Colt didn't answer. He watched the horizon and tightened the cinch on his saddle. Thomas Mercer wasn't a raider or an outlaw. He was worse. A lawman gone hollow. A sheriff once respected, then feared, then hunted. He used the law like a branding iron. Whatever he touched, he marked as his. June had lived under that mark. Her escape was quiet, deliberate. She fled with the children under a sky of silence and never looked back. Now silence was coming for her again. On the 3rd day, a boy arrived at the canyon, barefoot, trembling, dust-caked. He handed Colt a folded note, then disappeared back into the desert like smoke on wind. Colt read the message aloud. "You have what's mine. The law won't help you. The army won't find you. I will. I always do. TM." June looked away, then met Colt's eyes. "He's here. Not sending men. Coming himself." Emma exhaled sharply. "Then we don't have much time." Colt folded the paper. "Then we don't waste any." They fortified the canyon. Colt and Tommy buried caltrops in narrow passes, dug trenches, and tied bells to brush. Emma packed their supplies into saddlebags. June cleaned and loaded the rifles, showing Miley how to count rounds, where to aim. They weren't building a fortress. They were drawing a line. That night, a voice came from the south ridge, low, steady, unmistakable. "June." She stepped into the firelight, standing just beyond the cabin's edge. "You're outnumbered," Mercer called. "Outgunned." but I'll give you one chance. You've given me nothing, she answered. I gave you children, a name, shelter. You gave me silence and fear, and I took the rest myself. You're not strong enough to keep them. June's voice didn't tremble. Then come and try. Colt stayed up all night watching the ridges. No movement, no fire, just wind and the hush of the canyon holding its breath. By dawn he saw the footprints, 6 men, maybe more, circling wide, testing defenses. That night, he set a false fire on the far ridge, built a dummy camp, left signs of movement, scraps of food. Then he took the children and Emma north into the hills. Only he and June stayed behind. They came just after midnight. 3 riders, faces covered. One tossed a torch onto the cabin roof. Flames leapt. The front door burst open, and 2 men rushed inside, straight into Colt's trap. A tripwire triggered a flash of powder. Not deadly, but blinding. June shot the 3rd man in the gut before he reached the porch. The fire spread. Shadows danced. But Mercer never showed himself. Only silence answered. At dawn, the fire was out. 3 bodies lay in the dirt. June's hands were blistered from dragging buckets. Colt's cheek was torn from shrapnel. Emma returned with the children just as the smoke began to lift. He didn't come, Colt said. No, June whispered, because he's not done testing us. They packed what they could, saddled the horses. Colt handed Tommy a knife and Miley a slingshot. Neither child hesitated. Emma loaded jars of medicine and old letters. June tucked a photo into her coat, the only image she had of life before fear. They set out that night, north into the deeper canyon. Before leaving, Colt buried a charge beneath the pass. Dynamite salvaged from the old mine. A last resort. The moon was high when they stopped to rest. They built no fire. June sat beside Colt, her breath shallow but calm. He'll chase us. He'll try. You know he won't stop. Colt nodded. Then we don't stop either. By the 3rd night, they reached a narrow gorge with steep stone walls and only one path through. A place Colt remembered from long ago. He turned to June. We hold here. We can't fight forever. No, he said, but we can end it. Colt rode alone that night, found Mercer's camp in a shallow basin lit by low coals and watchful eyes. 15 men, horses ready, guns polished. Mercer stood by the fire, arms folded. You've got nerve, he said. I've got an offer. You don't have anything I want. You had a badge once, Colt said, tossing something into the firelight. Mercer caught it. A tarnished marshal's star, bent and worn. His own. Colt's voice stayed low. You were a good man once. You believed in justice. That badge meant something. Until it didn't. Mercer turned it over in his hand. His jaw tightened. I don't want to kill you, Colt said. But I will. Then do it now. No, Colt said. I'm giving you a chance. Walk away. Let them go. Let her go. Mercer looked past him toward the hills, then into the fire, then down at the badge. He dropped it into the flames. Tell her I'll find her, he said. If not now, someday. Colt turned and rode into the dark. They left the gorge before sunrise. Colt lit the charge as they passed through, sealing the path behind them in a thunder of stone. They didn't stop. They didn't speak. They just rode out of the past and into something like freedom. The gorge collapsed behind them in a roar of stone and smoke. For a moment no one moved. Dust hung in the air like fog, and the silence that followed felt almost holy. Colt watched the rocks settle, then turned to June. It's done. June didn't nod. Her eyes were locked on the path they'd just sealed, where the past had chased them for too long. We're not running anymore, she said. No, Colt replied. We're not. They followed a narrow trail through the hills, keeping low. Emma led the wagon. The children walked now, heads high, steps steady. Not a word of complaint passed their lips. By evening, they reached a dry plateau with a view that stretched for miles. No riders behind. No smoke ahead. Colt stopped there. This is where we make our stand. That night, they built a fire, not for warmth but for defiance. But Mercer was not finished. He came alone, riding out of the east just past midnight. No torch, no rifle, just the same gray coat and an old, quiet fury. Colt met him halfway between the firelight and the dark. "It's over," Colt said. Mercer dismounted. "It's never over. Not for men like us. We're not the same." Mercer's hand hovered near his belt. "You protect what was mine. You lost that right when she bled alone in the desert." A long silence. Then June stepped from behind the fire. "Tom." He turned, saw her clearly for the first time. Thin, tired, but unbroken. "I'm not afraid of you anymore," she said. "I never asked for your fear." "No," she said. "You demanded silence." Mercer's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Colt stepped forward. "Leave, or end it here." Mercer's hand twitched near the revolver. But then his eyes met June's, and he saw something he couldn't undo. Mercer turned, mounted, and rode away without a word. Silver Flats sat at the edge of nowhere. One road, a few wood-plank buildings, and hills that caught fire every sunset. It had no sheriff, no telegraph, and nobody asking questions. It was perfect. They arrived just after dawn. June sat beside Emma on the wagon bench. Colt rode ahead, eyes scanning rooftops out of habit. The children leaned forward under the canvas, trying to catch their first glimpse of a new beginning. A man sweeping dust from his porch gave a quiet nod. A woman setting out bread offered a faint smile. No one asked where they came from, so they stayed. Colt took work at the mill. Paid little, but it kept his hands busy and his mind still. The steady rhythm of gears and stone suited him. June worked at the bakery. The warmth there softened her. She brought home bread and stories. At night, she braided Miley's hair, listened to Tommy describe wooden animals he was carving. Horses, birds, coyotes. Emma moved into a small house by the creek and started growing herbs. People began calling her Document. She never corrected them. Miley joined the church choir. Her voice, once quiet, now filled the chapel like sunlight. Tommy's limp remained, but he no longer hid it. He helped sweep the shop fronts, asked questions, built things. One evening, June and Colt sat on the porch, the sun brushing the hills in gold. "You've changed," she said softly. "So have you." She looked at him. "Are you staying?" Colt didn't speak at first. Then, "I stayed the moment I saw you bleeding by the water." She reached for his hand, held it tight. Inside, the children's laughter drifted through the walls. Some days Colt still walked the ridge at dawn, rifle slung across his back, scanning for riders that never came. But each time he returned, the silence felt less like fear and more like peace. They planted a garden. They fixed the roof. They learned what it meant to live without looking over their shoulders. The past didn't vanish, but it no longer ruled them, and in its place, something better took root. Quiet, strong, and real. They hadn't defeated the world, but they'd made space for each other in it. And that was enough. Bye-bye.